Welcome to the Mass Media Talk podcast. Stacy Tyler and Brian Howard with you, talking all things mass media. Today we're talking about net winners and losers, and we're not talking about weight gain or loss, because we know who would be the weight gainer and loser here in this crowd. Let's talk about, in media. I think, Stacy, this is interesting because media is so entertainment oriented. We watch movies, TV shows, listen to music. We don't think about it like buying products. We think about it as entertainment. So I don't think a lot of us think about it as a business deal. And so one of the things we look at in this chapter is, when we buy stuff, when we pay for media or we don't pay for media, are we getting what we want, what we pay for? And a great quote today, actually, it was a devotional today. If you're not paying for it, you are the product, right? Which is pretty much it, right? If you're not paying for it, somebody's paying for it, and it's because you're reusing it, kind of thing. So Stacey, where do you want to go with this? It's interesting to look at, kind of behind the scenes. So all of us pay for media either directly or indirectly, whether or not we think we are. So we go to the Facebook page, and all those ads that got pushed in there, that's we're the product. They're pushing the ads into our eyeballs, and hopefully, we're going to do something with it. So that's how that's paid for. What do you think, Stacey? What should we talk about on this particular chapter that catches your attention?
I think one thing, along with the economic perspective, as far as, we always think of media in terms of money, but I love that the chapter points out in terms of time, how long you're spending, scrolling, how long you're looking at an ad, how long you're thinking about buying something, all of those things. And the more time that you're spending, the more, like you and I were just talking about, the more data that these companies can collect on you, and by that they can really target you with very niche ads that you're more likely to succumb to, that you're more likely to buy from, and so it's a really interesting world how much advertising has changed since the advent of social media. It's not just a blanket television advertisement or radio advertisement that might go out to hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people. We're looking at a very small percentage of people that might fit into this particular niche and targeting them. And it's amazing if you go out and look at like Facebook ads and how narrow you can focus on a group of people that like a certain site, make a certain amount of money, live in a particular zip code, what their age bracket is, their demographics. And I think that there is definitely some good that comes from that, because none of us want to be advertised products that we will never buy or that we have zero interest in. And so I think there is some benefit there, but it is also kind of scary when you think about how much they know about you, that they're able to target you in that way.
Yeah, if we could go back in time when I was a little kid, so we go back to 1970, and you got 3 or 4 TV channels. You have major newspapers like the New York Times. They don't have national distribution because that's very expensive, right? USA Today was innovative in that they put different printing areas around the country so they could print them in different areas and then distribute them via paper, right? But anytime you're thinking about that, how much information can they track on you? Well, 70s and 80s, not much. We had Nielsen ratings, so they knew if the TV was on, if you were doing a ratings book, they knew how many people lived in the household, the accuracy. They didn't know anything about your lifestyle or anything like that, none of that demographic information. And suddenly we're thrust in this whole brand new world where now when you sign up, well, if you're honest and you sign up for a social media account and knows a little bit about you, your birth date, because they want to know if you're above age to be legal to use it. So you got a birth date, again, if you're honest, some sort of information. But then even if you're not, it's going to figure a lot of things out about you, because every time you scroll, everything you click on is recorded and then goes into a database, these, mysterious database, but it's there. And so, if you've never thought about it, then do the experiment where go to Google and search for a product, whatever it is, search for something that may be something you haven't searched before, then go to your social media and see what starts popping up. My students talk about this all the time. It's like, oh, it's so crazy. And then I just started noticing, I did this Google search, and suddenly every ad that pops up is for that item or something related to that item. And so some people love that because, I don't want the downside of having a bunch of irrelevant ads popping up. But on the flip side, some people think it's kind of creepy that Then what's interesting, if you have a shared computer or shared space with your family, like my Amazon account, my wife and I, my kids, we all buy stuff off of it. So the recommendations
Yes.
are crazy, right? So like, we've got, makeup, we've got, it's like, what are the recommendations? Who do they think's using this particular account? I buy
True.
textbooks for media stuff. And so, who is this person? So I guess maybe they figure it out, but it messes them up. But yeah, I think it's changed so much over time. And there are some new laws that have come out to try and curtail some of that, some of
Yeah.
the cookies and things that were used to be, they didn't have to tell you, so you can opt in or opt out on some of those things. And we can use a browser that doesn't, incognito browser. And so that can help out as well. But those things are I don't know what you think about this, but I don't think most people, that big long thing you click I accept after you sign up for Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest. If you find anybody who's read through that whole thing before they say it, give them $100 but we agree to a lot of things we probably wouldn't be that happy about. And most people don't go back in and tweak those settings very often. They just go with the default kind of thing. So we give a lot of information out.
We do. And I'm one of those people that, at least on websites, I go through and I look at all of the things and I make sure I take off any kind of tracking or marketing or any of that kind of stuff. Or I never like it when a website says, we want to know your location. Where are you right now? That's always scary too. So I think, yeah, just having an awareness. And there have been news stories over the years that have popped up, talking about, hey, do you have this setting on? Make sure that you don't have your tracking setting on when you're using these particular services. Or, you could find out all kinds of information. But I think just having an awareness of what you're getting into. And I agree. Some of the clauses in, you're right. When you sign up for some of these social media platforms, it's extreme what you have to read through, and people aren't going to do that generally. So you probably do sign up for a lot more than you bargained for.
Yeah, maybe that's a good plan. You put enough in there, it's just fatigue. You don't want to read through it all. It's like scroll. Yeah, like 20 pages long kind of thing. One thing I thought we should bring up, is as consumers, we see it from a certain perspective. If you're in the business side of things, you run an operation, you sell stuff, you're trying to promote your stuff on social media, you're going to look at it in a different way as far as how to get customers and that kind of thing. And one of the things we talked about is almost, what's the term? It's cultivating customers or addicting customers. No, what's the term we use for that one? Getting people to come back over and over and over again.
Yes. Yes.
And I think it sounds very, kind of, it's a plot, trying to get us to come back.
Conditioning audiences.
Yeah, conditioning the audience.
Yeah.
But you think about that. So, like right now, of course, The Voice has come out. And so I sit down with my wife and daughter. And so watched an episode of The Voice. Of course, they leave a cliffhanger at the end.
Of course.
Who's the person going to pick? Find out tomorrow night. It's like, oh. So you say, I don't want to wait. Then you come back, and tomorrow night you come and watch again, right? So they're conditioning us, which it sounds, but think about this. If you got a favorite sandwich shop, they're conditioning you to come back with tasty sandwich, right? It's like, hey, it was really good. I'm going to go back tomorrow. So that doesn't sound dangerous or somebody's trying to, pull the wool over your eyes. So realistically, the idea is that's how they make money, is get people to watch, read, whatever. And so the more people watch and read and listen, then the more money they make. So it makes sense to try and do that. Now, on the flip side, we talk about the net winners and net losers. So are we getting what we want out of it? Or are we just kind of, hey, I'm going to, go back and eat the same sandwich every day, but I could have eaten something else but I didn't try it, right? Or something like that. What do you think about that? I know that the conditioning thing in discussion boards often gets a lot of interesting comments because people think, wow, that's kind of scary. They're trying to make me do stuff, but make you do stuff's a little bit strong, but certainly they want you to. And they is, owners, operators, whoever runs a media business.
Well, and I think, I think about growing up and about, like Disney, for example, and how they hook kids in from the time that they're tiny, watching Disney movies to becoming these full-fledged Disney adults, right? That buy the annual pass and spend thousands of dollars in their parks and on their products and on their movies. And, that's just one small example. But I also think about, like, for the longest time, my mom always used Tide detergent growing up. And so that's just what I bought. Or like my family always used Crest toothpaste. And so that's just what I bought. And so you kind of, I think that conditioning also comes from maybe our own families or our own upbringing, things that we're just familiar with and used to, and don't feel like branching out and trying new things because it's just something that's always worked. And so I think that's one way that they attract long-term customers too, is by, getting you when you're small and, you grow up with some of those same habits.
Yeah, that brand loyalty. They're going to use this product another. Tide is the best, whether it is or not, right? Kind of thing. That's a long-standing one. One of the things I was thinking about as we're talking about this is, we're the advertising has changed a lot because, again, it used to be a broad audience. So if you bought an ad on NBC in prime time, it's not going to be targeted very narrowly. It could be maybe more towards men or more towards women, but very broadly.
Yes.
Now, on social media or other places, then it can be extremely targeted, as you mentioned, which has changed the whole game as far as, this niche oriented. It started with, magazines, I think, were really the first niche oriented because, broad magazines were great, but then TV came along and they were dying. And so this whole life cycle thing like we talked about last week. So then it's really niche oriented. I'm going to target this particular audience. So now you have a gazillion magazines. But then, of course, internet came and took that to the next extreme, right? So now if you're a cat lover who makes, knits cat costumes, there's going to be a niche for you. And there's probably even some advertising or maybe an online publication about that. How do you think that's changed? Think about it from Truth's perspective, from we as consumers, and then as someone who's a producer of media content, what kind of impact does that have, having such a narrow niche that you can reach?
I think it's really effective for businesses, especially for small businesses. I think that's where we've seen such a huge growth in small businesses. And I also think that, I think one way that the advertising executives and, all these different advertisers have found one niche way to work is with influencers. They get you to buy in by having someone that you trust, someone that you follow deliberately that's peddling their products. They get a kickback. You get a 10% off discount, whatever it is, when you use their code. I mean, we've all seen this so many times, but I think that's one way, that's one way that they've found to kind of get around some of that advertising fatigue. And then I think also something else I've noticed too is, whenever you sign up for a new service, if you want a 10% coupon, 10% off coupon, you not only have to give your email now, but you have to give your phone number. You have to accept text messages too. And I've turned down so many because, my phone is still a little bit private. I don't need everybody texting me and, advertising to me constantly. And I don't like that is heading in that direction. I think that's tough.
Yeah.
Too.
That gets into your privacy a little bit. I'm thinking, there's this term, everything old is new again. I talked about it last week, but you think about influencers, it's not new, it's just become micro. Because, in the past, athletes, Oprah, the ultimate influencer.
So true.
80s and 90s. And so she would say, hey, I love this product, Oprah's favorite things. And suddenly she recommends a book and it's flying off the shelves. Now we don't have that many macro influencers like that. There's still athletes and stuff, but with all true. Media channels, now we search for these niche-oriented influencers where someone you like them because their lifestyle, their home decorations, what you like, they show you all the latest and best ways to gain weight if you're trying to become a muscle mass person.
Yes.
And so they recommend a product and you say, yeah. And I think it's probably, more personal, so it's probably more effective than the mass appeal. Although it's hard to, be Oprah's influence back in the day.
That's true.
But I don't think you can get that anymore. I just don't think that level of influence is available in such a segmented marketplace that exists today.
Yeah. No, I don't. I think it's certainly given more opportunities for people. You don't have to be super famous to make a difference, to have an influence over a population of people. And we see so many influencers with, 20, 30,000 people following them that really do, they have their specific following, and they, I'm sure, are making some good money, along with, we could talk about YouTube as well. YouTube ads and YouTube influencers. Twitch is another one where people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars based on, a 2 or 5 minute YouTube video, or, streaming themselves playing video games. I mean, there are so many different ways that people are finding ways to, make a living off of some of these new advertising methods.
Yeah, no, one interesting I discovered, my daughter worked for a company that worked a lot with influencers, and the number was important, but not as important as who the people were that were following. If you had the right demographic, psychographic profile, and you only had to be maybe a couple thousand, and you could be making just as much as somebody who had 300, half a million.
Wow.
Because it was the right segment, because a lot of times numbers are inflated. We can kind of learn that from Twitter when they're investigating that. Hey, are these real people or are they bots, right? So
That's true.
People can play. But, if you can verify these are real people and they fit in the right demographic, just like anything, just back like in the old magazine days, say, hey, this magazine fits the right demographic. I can charge you, 50 grand for this ad because it's going to people who are going to spend that much in advertising versus you can spend $50 because, it's going to people who are not going to spend that much. So I thought that was very interesting because the whole idea is, hey, I've got to have tons and tons of followers. And of course that helps. But if you got the right followers that fit the right demographic, and talking all kinds of demographics now, just not, male, female, how old you are, but all those psychographic profiles that come into play because every click we click on, knows something about us. So I think that's interesting. We see interesting how it goes. You kind of have ebbs and flows, and
yes,
there's some risk with the influencer because it's all about you. And we've seen that, Martha Stewart, she goes to jail, right? And so her stocks plummet. So for the individual influencers, all it takes is some faux pas, they say something, and then the crowd, got kind of that cancel culture thing going on.
Yes.
There's the wrong thing, and they can suddenly be on the outs and not be an influencer for the right reasons anymore. So it is an interesting landscape that we live in. I'm not sure where we're going, but I wish I did. Stacey, I want to ask you, one of the concepts in here is net winners or losers, and the concept is not just money, but also time. As you've examined it, no great confessions, but what do you think about the net winner, net loser? And what makes you a net winner media-wise? This is not like net winner personality. I'm a winner, your media consumption. What brings you out on top? You get the most return on your investment versus you feel like maybe I'm, not so much.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think certainly some forms of mass media, like for example, my Amazon Prime membership that gives me access to Amazon Prime Video. I think that's I always feel like a net winner when if I find a show that I'm really invested in, or movies. Disney Plus would be another one that maybe we use it so often that I certainly feel like a net winner because we consume that product a lot. And I think it's a good thing to take a look at for all of our students, especially like all the products that you consume. Is it something that is satisfying your needs? Is it something you enjoy? Is it worth your time and money to invest in? And if not, it might be well worth, canceling that subscription or unfollowing that person or that company, because our time and money is precious and it's a finite resource. So any amount of time or money that we're giving to a company should be for our benefit too, I think.
One project I used to do is, okay, I want to think of every product you use since you got up this morning, and for guys, that was maybe toothpaste. For the women, it was like, oh yeah, I put on my makeup. So for the women, it was always more. There were a few guys that were exceptions. That's a little stereotypical, but it was always true. But then I said, okay, so now think about this. So suddenly your discretionary income is cut off. All you have enough is for that absolute needs. What on that list do you have to have, and what could you live without? And some of the women would say, well, I got to have makeup. I can't live without it. Say, no, absolute need. So it's interesting that the project was defined. What do we define as needs versus wants? And sometimes, obviously, in extremes, needs and wants can have a big disparity. But it was good to look at and see, okay, do I have to have, 5 subscriptions? Do I need Disney Plus? And do I need this? And do I need this? Or is it what I want? And, it's okay to have things that you want, especially if you feel like it meets your entertainment needs, and whatever it is, I get what I want out of it, and I feel like I'm a net winner because I'm very satisfied with my consumption, and I'm okay with that. Versus back in the cable days, there was a gentleman who tried to do basically what we're doing now. He wanted a la carte cable, so you could sign up for cable and you could say, I want these 3 channels, I don't want that one, I don't want that one, but that didn't happen.
Okay.
You couldn't do that one in cable land but now it totally works that way, right? Because now you subscribe to Disney Plus, you subscribe to Amazon Prime, and so you get their offerings. So that works, right? So I thought very interesting how things have changed to the point where, yeah, I don't get all these channels I was paying for with a really high cable subscription. It was really expensive, and I didn't watch most of those channels. Never watched them, but I'm
Right.
subsidizing them. And the fear was, of course, for some of the less viewed ones, that they would go away because of the marketplace, right? Because now
Yes.
I'm paying for what I want, goodbye to whatever those channels are. And yeah, it's kind of happening. Now you either pay for what you want or it disappears and you don't have that plethora of, you do, but somebody's got to support it somehow. It's not being supported just because it's on the docket. The total cable rundown. Disney, ABC used to do that to all the cable companies. I'm sure they still do. If you're going to run ABC, you're going to run Disney, and you're going to run ESPN.
Yes.
So you either take them all or you get none of them. And here's what you're going to pay for, and you're going to like it. Okay. But now, of course, now they've gone and say, hey, we've got our own channel, so thanks.
Yeah.
Everybody for our own stuff, and that seems to be working pretty well. Got a lot of subscribers. You and me both, right?
It's true. Yes, it is. It is working well. And I think it's interesting to see now we're starting to see some of these other subscription services changing. Like Netflix will start having ads in 2023. And, I think I was just thinking anytime you download a free app, you are inundated with ads. And so you have to decide, am I going to pay the extra money to have an ad-free version? Or am I okay watching the ads because I don't have to pay for, for having, am I okay watching the ads? So I think we really have to decide, is it worth our time to watch the ads because we're getting it for free? Or am I willing to pay the extra money to avoid watching the advertisements?
Yeah. And I think one of the main messages I think all of us need to know, especially as students as you're coming up, because a lot of times as a youth and a young adult, you're getting everything for free. You're not paying for it. It's in your house. You get your phone. And we think, well, that's free. But in reality, nothing is really free. There's always an underlying cost. Yeah. So whether it's the social media that we don't pay for, but what we are paying for is in all the ads that come with it. So, and the information we give out, we don't realize that that's really valuable. Or the ads that come in, that's, we're paying for it because we're the product. Here comes the ads. Somebody's paying to get those in front of us. So there's always something to pay. So very rarely is something absolutely free. And the thing we talked about last week, of course, is if you really like it, should it be free? I mean, hey, somebody's got to pay the salary. If your favorite actor never gets paid, then they're going to quit acting, right? I think sometimes because it's the arts, people think, oh, she's just doing it for free because I love to sing, I love to act, which is wonderful, but it doesn't bake any cakes and it doesn't build a house kind of thing. So
so true. Support, definitely support the artists, the influencers that you align with and that you feel deserve your time and money. I think that's what it comes down to. And I think that is a great point with college students. When I read through the project, the week 3 project, where they do go through all the items in their household, and I think that's a really interesting project to look at for students in particular, how much money they're spending on, beauty products or, on food versus, rent and maybe some of those more basic needs. And I think that they're in a unique position where they really are probably counting every penny, every dollar. And so it is even more important for them to find free services or, to use mom and dad's account. And sooner or later, I think having this education background in advertising will help them determine, I hope it will help all of you determine what is worth paying for, and at the end when you can afford a little bit more.
This is where we should have set up a Patreon account and asked for money right now, right?
Yes.
That's the worst part of working for like a PBS affiliated station is, hey, it's time for the fundraising time. Where 10 minutes for a show and people will be begging for money for the next half hour. We won't do that. Stacey, last words. What do you think? Anything else we should bring up on this discussion? This is so rich with stuff. A lot of fun to talk about and start to look at. I think anytime we can be introspective and start like, okay, what am I spending? Why? Is it worth my time? Otherwise, it's just kind of, it's not like it's the end of the world, but certainly if you can understand yourself, what you're getting for your time and your money and whether it's worthwhile, at least if you understand that, you can decide, okay, it really is worth it. For me, I might binge watching something. It's not worth it to me, perhaps. But for someone else, it is, because it's totally worthwhile. And it might be the flip. I watch, 6 hours of football because I love football so much, right? It's totally worth it for me. Somebody else would say, what a waste of time. You're a loser, right? So what are your last thoughts on this chapter? Anything else you want to bring up?
It's true. I think that's a great point. It's so individual. It's everybody, is going to have a different viewpoint on what makes them a net winner and net loser. But I think just even knowing about that and evaluating the different things that you use, that you buy, that you spend time with, and looking at that resource is not just money but time, I think adds a whole nother level of perspective to it that's going to help you throughout your entire life. And I think it will help you find the most joy out of mass media instead of feeling, frustrated or like you're always paying money and not getting what's being, what you feel you're owed or, what your money's worth. I think being able to evaluate how much, you're enjoying that particular medium or that it's worth your time or investment, that can make a huge difference throughout your entire life. So I think it's great information.
Yeah, and probably will change over time. That's
For sure.
The Hallmark watching that I would never thought I would do. Well, next week we get to talk about more. So this was the economic game kind of thing. The industry perspective is good because a lot of our students will be going into a mass media related industry, and it's good to start thinking about it from someone who's actually wants to make money from media and what kind of things should you think about. And also we start thinking a little bit ethically as well. So, do I want to work for Philip Morris and do a PR campaign for those guys? And everybody conditioned to smoke my cigarettes or whatever it is.
Yes.
Anyway, it'll be fun to talk about. So look forward to another chat next week, Stacey.
Yes, I will too. Thank you so much, Brian.